Daniel chapter 3. We've seen chapter 1, King Nebuchadnezzar comes and capturing the whole earth. They come into his power, but we see in the first chapter how they get whatever's left of Israel, take some of the captives to Babylon. Among these are Daniel, whose book is written by. Chapter 2, the king had a vision, saw all the way to the end of the earth, started right there in King Nebuchadnezzar's time, even though he said, I was going to show you what's going to happen hereafter. So Daniel makes known the dream, and we see a little bit of King Nebuchadnezzar's. Well, he rules, he's got all authority, so that's why he's the head of gold. Whatever the king says, he doesn't have to ask anybody. He is the law of the land. And if he gets furious, he gets furious, and it doesn't matter. There's nobody to calm him down. He's just going to do whatever he's going to do. So now we come to chapter 3, verses 1 through 3. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits, and the breadth thereof 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent together to gather together the princes, the governors, the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces, come to the dedication of the image which Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Then the princes, the governors, the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all rulers of the province were gathered together unto the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up, and they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Probably inspired by the dream he had with the head of gold and everything else. Well, he makes an image all of gold because, he's the gold part. So he brings them all into town. So anybody that's got any authority in all the land, then, and again, he controls the whole earth. If you're under Nebuchadnezzar's authority and you've got authority over others, you're coming now to this plain to see this gold image. So it's 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide. This is a big statue. So a cubit, 18 inches. 4 through 7. Then a herald cried aloud, To you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at the time you hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. And whoso falleth not down and worship, shall the same hour be cast in the midst of a burning fiery furnace. Therefore at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, all the stuff, all the people of the nations and languages fell down and worshiped the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So there's a lot of repetition in these verses. So when you hear the music, you got to worship. If you don't worship, you're going to be cast into this fiery furnace. And it's likely that this furnace was what they used to smelt the gold for this statue. So same gold that made the statue is likely going to be the one that if you don't obey what the king says, you're going to be thrown into that furnace. So 8 through 12. Wherefore at that time certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. They spake and said to King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, flute, and all that stuff, all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoso falleth not down and worship that, he should be cast in the midst of a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which you've set up. So we got these 3 young kids from Israel, and they're leaders in this town, and they're defying the king. And of course, there's jealousy on behalf of everybody else in the land, because here they are. Why do they have this big spot, these kids ruling over me? So there's a little jealousy. There's always a plot to kill the Jews. That's what the devil likes to do. And so they're telling on the Jews, hey, king, these Jews aren't doing what you said. So 13 to 15. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in his rage and fury, commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do you not serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Now if ye be ready, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, and all that stuff, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made, well. If ye worship not, ye shall be cast in the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? So these young guys have set themselves aside. So they didn't want to eat the king's food, and God, they were tested then, and they got fatter on the king's meals. And now, no, Nebuchadnezzar, we're not going to worship your God. So they have things already made up in their minds so that when the hour of temptation came, they were able to be kept out of it. So they said, no, we're not going to be evil. We're not going to worship anything except for God. So verses 16 through 18, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thy hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. So these are young guys, and they say in their heads, we only worship God. And King Nebuchadnezzar is now just furious. So he got mad when he heard the report. He softened when he saw them come up. These are friends of Daniel. The king likes these guys. And again, they're young guys. They tell him right to his face, we're not worshiping your gods. And our God is able to deliver us. But even if he doesn't, we're not going to worship anything but God. Verses 19 through 21. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visions was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat up the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. And he commanded the most mighty men that were in his armies to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their hosen, their hats, and their other garments, and were cast in the midst of the burning fiery furnace. So Nebuchadnezzar was true to his word. He's mad at him, and in his fury, he threw him into the fire. Verses 22 through 25. Therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent, and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound in the midst of the fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished, and rose up in haste, and spoke, and said unto his counselors, Did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, True, O king. He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. In front of all the world, all the people that matter, God is performing a miracle. And not only do the 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, are seen in there without hurt, but there's a 4th one in there. So God shows himself in the midst of this fire to all these Gentiles, as a matter of fact, because they're worshiping the statue, they're worshiping who knows what other gods, and God's revealing himself to them. So 26 to the end of the chapter, verse 30. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace, and spake and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, ye servants of the Most High God, come forth, and come hither. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth of the midst of the fire. And the princes, governors, and captains, and the king's counselors being gathered together, saw these men, upon whose bodies the fire had no power, nor was a hair of their head singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word, and yielded their bodies, that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree, that every people, nation, and language which speak anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. These 3 Hebrews come out of the fire. The 4th one, which may be an angel, it looks like, he just disappeared, I guess. We're not told what happens to him, but the 3 men, they came out of the fire. This is a miracle. This is supernatural. Only God can do it. And now the whole world recognizes that there is one God that can do what no other gods can do. And so the king makes a decree now. You can't talk about the Hebrews' God. So don't speak about their God. Let them do what they want to. Don't come to me and tell me anything about their God. That's the decree, and we have to learn from this. So there's coming the Great Tribulation. So the last 3.5 years of God's punishment on Israel is going to extend to the whole world. And we need to get our mindset like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that when the trouble comes, that we're only going to worship God. God can save us in the midst of the trouble. He can keep us out of it, or we die and we be with God. So that's the mindset we have to have. That's what the takeaway is from chapter 3. We'll be moving on to chapter 4 in the next session.